Hello, welcome to another episode of Lansing Pulse. Today I have with me Public Works Director Michael Spickelmier. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So you are a civil engineer.
Correct.
You got your degree from Mizzou.
Yes, University of Missouri. Yep.
Nice. And you worked in the private sector for quite a long time.
Yes, I worked as a consultant for about 5 years before I joined the public sector.
Okay.
And also did a stint in the Missouri Army National Guard as an engineer officer. So I've got kind of a varied degree in civil engineering, from construction to design to public works. So.
Right, which makes you well-rounded. And you've been with the city of Lansing for how long?
It will be 6 years in July.
Nice. So we have seen mill and overlay and pavement work starting on K7, which is KDOT, but the city will be starting its mill and overlay very soon. So why don't we talk a little bit about that process?
Sure. Mill and overlay is probably our primary way of maintaining the streets within the city of Lansing. So the process starts every year. We reevaluate our street conditions, and we use something called the modified pacer system.
Okay.
And that is where we give each street a numeric value, and depending on the numeric value will kind of help us determine priority. We combine that also with some geography to try to get some cost savings through mobilization, where if we got a street that's close to another street, that we could kind of bundle them all together. Or, a lot of times we'll do a subdivision while we're in that area, just so that we minimize the times we need to open and close streets, because it does cause some disruption while we're doing the mill and overlay work.
Right. So you said that you assign a numerical value. So, is that like over the course of a year, as you're driving around the city doing different things, you kind of evaluate the streets, or is there a time frame that you spend just evaluating streets?
We typically do an evaluation of streets in the fall.
Okay.
Before winter. Sometimes, though, winter is probably without a doubt the most taxing on our streets, because a lot of times you'll get freeze thaw damage and it'll create potholes but typically in the fall we put together we reevaluate all our streets. We drive all the streets, sometimes we walk some of them, sometimes we do it in the car, sometimes we will actually do it in a golf cart or a UTV, just because we've got over 60 miles of streets. So we try to do that, and we try to do it every year, just to kind of give us a baseline of what we're doing.
Okay, that makes sense. And then you also are responsible for salt and ice clearing the streets in the winter. And you just put forth an update. No, that's tonight at the work session.
Yes.
You have a new update.
Yes. We basically were working off a plan that was originally developed in 2008. And through some feedback, we found that there are some things that we were doing outside of the plan and some things that we were doing within the plan. And so really the thought was just to bring the plan into more compliance with how we're doing our operations to date. And so that kind of goes into the work sessions being presented, and then sometime later in the year, we'll bring the full plan back for adoption.
Okay. Now, we get a lot of compliments on how well our streets are cleared. Whenever we post that it's happening, we get a lot of thank you so much. Ours are better than surrounding areas. I mean, what do you attribute that to?
It's really the capability and the pride that our crew takes in their job, and their job well done. Again, when we're redoing the plan, we're doing it not to change our level of service at all. It's more just to capture in the plan how we're operating now. We're adjusting some of our snowfall mobilization criteria. I think the biggest reason is there's a great deal of pride that our crew is small. We've got basically we've got our full-time streets guys, but then when we have more snow than we can just handle with our crew, then we actually plus up with help from Parks and Rec, from wastewater, from the guys here in the office, and maintenance, building maintenance. We will it's a really an all hands on deck operation when you get a lot of snow. And we've, over the past few years, we've equipped a couple more pickup trucks with snow plows.
Right.
Not as efficient or as effective as a large truck, but it can get into parking lots pretty well. And it just gives us more plow assets that allow us to continue to plow. And, everyone pretty much has a role, and often on a weekend or an overnight, I'll spend some time in the plow as well. Just a couple reasons. One, to see what's actually going on in the field. And then two, to kind of, provide any work that anyone does is just work someone else doesn't have to do later. So again,
Right.
the whole many hands make light work.
Right. Well, Lansing has demonstrated that we're a pretty good team. Like, we pull together. We everybody will step outside of their normal lane to help when needed. Like, we've seen that with our events and such. But tell me, what else besides streets does Public Works do? Because I don't know that everybody knows.
Public Works, again, streets is our primary focus, and
Right.
mill and overlay is our big expenditure for the year.
Right.
And if anyone's interested, the mill and overlay is being published in the Lansing Connection.
Yes, it
that
is.
should be in mailboxes soon.
Yes.
And you'll see in there that we've got a couple different streets identified. We've got some alternates identified. Unfortunately, due to budgetary constraints, we were not able to achieve all of our alternates. So primarily, we're going to be working on the primary routes, and then I think we're going to try to address the parking lot at Ken Bernard Park.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the things. And then when you see as alternates, just understand that will probably happen in a future year, because those were obviously identified as priorities under the system that we discussed earlier.
Right.
Some of the other stuff that Public Works does, the GIS department falls under Public Works. And so anytime you see the online maps or you see the maps and exhibits and stuff like that, we do a lot of that. Stormwater, and we are the flood manager for the city of Lansing.
That's true.
We coordinate with FEMA under the CRS program, which is the community rating system, where we talk about the flood insurance discount that you get as a Lansing resident because
Right.
of the work we do. And then stormwater is a big part. And unfortunately, we're starting to really see some expenditure in stormwater. Lansing's about 60 years old as an incorporated city, maybe a little bit older. And then a lot of our stormwater systems are really in that age range. And,
Right.
and we're starting to see some deterioration that's happening that's requiring the replacement of a lot of stormwater structures, crossroad culverts, pipes, inlets, and stuff of that nature.
You just did one, in fact, on Robin Road, I believe.
Yes. Robin Road was a project that had been identified a while ago. This one was a unique situation in that this was a stormwater culvert installed in the unincorporated part, and when it was annexed, we absorbed that infrastructure, and then the pipe had failed, and finally we were able to come to an agreement with the property owner, and we were able to make that installation.
Nice. Well, speaking of property owners, so we have a new housing development being built off of DeSoto. Who puts in those streets? I mean, is that the developer that has to put those in and pave them?
Yes. So anytime you get a new development, the developer is responsible to install the streets to the city standard. And so we did some inspection, and we made sure that the developer, or we do what's called quality assurance. Quality control is ultimately the responsibility of the developer. They agreed to put the curbs and put in the streets to our specification. They are required to do so before we will accept them. Our task out there is quality assurance. And I think one of the biggest things that people will notice is that we've got curbs in Lansing that are 50 years old. They're in better shape than curbs in Lansing that are 20 years old. So some of that is we adopted new concrete specifications about 10 years ago. So anything that's under the new specifications, we're hoping to get a little bit better longevity out of. And those were specifications developed in coordination with the cities in Kansas City. It's called the KCMMB, or the Kansas City Materials Maintenance Board, or something of that nature. I'm not sure, but there was a concerted effort amongst all the municipalities in the Kansas City Metro to come up with a concrete specification so that when you're pouring curbs in Overland Park or Shawnee or Leavenworth or Lansing, that the concrete supplier knows that this is the mix that they're going to use with this aggregate, these admixtures, and this is how we expect it. So now all of our curbs throughout the metro ought to be very similar, each other as far as the materials. And so we're
Nice.
hoping to get much better longevity out of our curbs and gutters with the adoption of that, 10 years ago or so.
And more continuity across the metro. I mean, everybody's curbs will look pretty
Well,
similar.
yes, and then when a contractor orders concrete for curbs, the material supplier understands, okay, well, this is the standard material supply. So they're very comfortable in making that mix, and they're comfortable in shipping it, and they know how it performs.
That makes sense. So as you travel around anywhere, I mean, if this is sort of a national thing, there will be variations in types of road surfaces. And some last longer than others. And obviously weather plays a big factor. But can you kind of explain why certain types might last longer than others?
Yeah, sure. One of the biggest things is in Lansing, we're fortunate in that, you'd like your asphalt to last 12 to 15 years and maybe even longer. And that's why we use the system to evaluate the pavement. We just don't replace on a schedule. We replace on a schedule combined with a evaluation of rating and performance. So one thing that we are seeing is that right now we're at about a 14-year schedule.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at what our bids are, and I did bring that information too, so I'm going to actually use my actual notes. And this was information that was presented to the City Council at the Capital Improvement Work Session. We do this every year. And one of the things is we're at, and it was shown last time, at a 14-year pavement life schedule. And that's because our average cost for linear foot of work that we do in the mill and overlay is around $50 a linear foot. And when you extrapolate that over the 60 miles that we have, plus cul-de-sacs do make it a little more complicated because they don't install as quickly because you have to turn the machines. And it's the same with snow removal. It takes about 5 times as long to do the same length of work in a cul-de-sac as a straight line because you have to turn and move and do that. But because of that average, we are expecting about 14-year before we can get to it. And we reevaluate that every year when we do the capital improvement program briefing to the City Council in our work session. And I think the biggest thing that we're struggling with is, like with everyone, is asphalt is a direct function of petroleum pricing. So as petroleum prices increase, asphalt price increase because asphalts are, a byproduct of the refining process. So therefore,
makes sense.
we are just seeing tremendous pressures. I mean, just for example, we went from about $35 a foot to almost $70 a foot.
Oh, wow.
And when I say the $50, that's an average over the past 5 years. So when we look at this year's pricing and add it into the average, there's a good chance that we're going to be closer to, $60, $65 a foot. And that really starts pushing your pavement life out past where you become effective. And that's something that we want to be very cognizant of and pay close attention to.
That makes sense. Okay. So one last question, unless there's anything that I failed to cover, in which case feel free to put it in at the end if I forgot to ask you something or something you wanted to tell us about. What do you not do that people assume that you do?
From a public works perspective?
Yes.
Well, a lot of people call the city with water questions.
Okay.
And, Landell is our water provider.
Correct.
So the city doesn't do that. And then in Lansing, we actually have a separate wastewater plant, and it is a award-winning plant and a great operation. So in some places, wastewater is part of public works, but here it's a separate, because it is a utility and it really does operate independently.
Right.
So those are probably the two biggest functions.
Right.
As we're approaching Public Works Week, you'll see we'll celebrate Public Works, and Public Works includes a lot of things. A lot of places it's public utilities, like in some municipalities it's actually power.
Right.
Or other things like that. But so Public Works encompasses all of that. In Lansing, our Public Works function is really limited to streets, stormwater, flood management, and then again we have the GIS component. Right. But our GIS professional also does our inspections for construction inspection during the mill and overlay season with the developers, with any kind of infrastructure projects that we execute here. Sometimes we contract for bigger projects, but that's more in-house. So
Perfect. Well, I know we got a call. We got a lot of calls about tree limbs and stuff across sidewalks, and that is something that Public Works does not do. You don't trim trees, and you don't.
Yes, that's a good yes. So trees are on private property. We didn't plant the trees,
Right.
You know,
Right.
for Public Works people, trees are obstacles that
Right.
you know create headaches
Right.
more than, you know, they are beautiful and we love our trees, but
Right.
if the tree's on private property or if it was planted in the right of way on your property, it's no different than you have to mow the grass that's
Right.
in the right of way. You have to maintain the trees that are on your property, and
Right.
you have to move the snow off the sidewalk
Right.
that is on your property. I mean, there's a lot of responsibilities that homeowners and tenants have to maintain their property. Pretty much, we like to say our responsibility for, you know, like physical hard maintenance ends at the back of the curb, and the right of way line is a dividing line between where we can and cannot go. We
Makes sense.
typically don't go on private property without permission.
Right.
There are places where we have easements where we do have permission, like we have to maintain a stormwater structure that's in an easement or something like that.
Right.
So,
Well, Mike, I really, really appreciate you coming on, talking about mill and overlay, and we will have you back maybe to talk about the snow improvement plan or snow and ice updated plan once that's adopted. And
sure.
Thanks
And
for
like I said, we're not planning on making any changes to service. We're
Right.
just really codifying, you know, what we've been doing
Right.
for the past few years. And kudos to our crew. They've got a
Yes.
lot of experience.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for a lot of years. We've got a lot of stability on our crew. I think that helps too, because we're not having to train new people. You know, we're you know, anytime we do have retirements and bring new people on, we have a robust mentoring program to help them understand how we do things, and we establish routes. It's great.
And we probably should give a shout out to Kenny Payne. He's one of the longest standing employees of the city. He's at 30 years. I think he's right behind our chief of police.
He's up there. He's pretty
Yeah.
close, and Kenny is a tremendous asset.
Yes.
I lean on Kenny and his expertise and his knowledge. Often, he is just a wonderful asset to the city, and you know, to myself personally. Most of the time, he has more information about the infrastructure. It's, you know, a lot of times he was there when it was installed,
Right.
and you know, we've joked that sometimes he's having to replace pipes that he put in when he was a young person, and that's never fun.
Right, right.
It's never fun.
Well, thank you again. And you have been watching Lansing Pulse.